Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Notes from Chicago. I'm Ashley Phillips. Today we have two leaders from Arts and Public Life, Alyssa Gregory and Isis Ferguson. Thank you both so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Before we jump into hearing about all of your amazing work at Arts and Public Life, I did want to ask, and we always start the episodes with this question for our guests: what do you love most about Chicago?
Oh my gosh, this is a really hard question because there's so many layers to it. I think what I love the most about Chicago is the actual people here. I love that. I think the people in Chicago are just built so different. And this way that we are like of a family and a community differently here in the city. The artistry, especially in this community in Chicago, is you cannot find what's here in New York or like in LA. Like it is just so perfectly Chicago. And that is one of my most favorite things.
I like in Chicago that culture is not concentrated in one area, one district, one neighborhood. It happens everywhere, and you can be in it in really surprising ways. So like traveling through the park, visiting a gallery, a storefront turned into, something else for a day. Even like the way that like grocery store signs are hand painted, I feel like there's pieces of culture everywhere you go. That feels really exciting to me. I also think what Alyssa said about the people, I think Chicago's a place where like ordinary people absolutely shape public life. And I don't even think the artists in Chicago, when we speak about people, I think Alyssa and I both often immediately go to artists, but artists here are nothing but extraordinary. Like I said, ordinary people do things, but the artists here in Chicago like find ways to like just change a block, change a neighborhood, change the whole feel of things. So I think that's really exciting, the way they also don't do one thing. They don't stay in one lane. Like to be an artist in Chicago means you teach, you organize, you archive, you do a mix of all of these things. And then, you have your own practice and you make your work.
So I think that's a really good segue into getting into Arts and Public Life, and its work within Washington Park, and sort of the wide. I mean, the two of you, what we're going to talk about with the two of you today, they're also very different like arenas of expertise. So I'm curious, just at a high level, like talk to me about the work, the mission of Arts and Public Life, specifically within the Washington Park neighborhood.
It's very simple. I'll keep it concise. Arts and Public Life was founded by the University of Chicago in Washington Park to support and encourage and connect engagement with the arts and culture on the South Side. We didn't invent arts and culture and bring it to the neighborhood. It has always been there. There's a long history of creativity, convening, and making in that neighborhood. So we're connecting to that legacy. The idea back in 2013 that is still true today is that when the Arts Incubator opened, arts organizations and residents and institutions have a role to play in community, and cultural investment shouldn't happen because you bring it to a place and, then try to change it. Cultural investment should happen because there's willing players in the neighborhood who are invested in place and want to make it a destination because that's where they live and that's where they love and that's where they work. And so honestly, what we do is connect with the folks who are doing incredible work and leverage resources and give access to great venues.
How come Washington Park is the right place for that?
Oh, I can start this, but Isis has much more like beautiful knowledge. But I think it's the history. The block that we're on is it's from Prairie to King Drive, and it's on Garfield Boulevard. And in those spaces that Arts and Public Life occupies, there's just this rich mega history of art that's already there. Like, as I said, we're building on a legacy that is already alive and thriving.
When we say there were, the history in the research that both staff and students and neighbors have done together reaches back to like the 30s all the way up through the research that we've done sort of stops in the 80s. But this is a place where there were jazz clubs, there were restaurants, there was performance spaces like theaters. Our own theater and outdoor space is literally on the ground. It has the same address as the Rum Boogie Cafe, which was a short-lived but really important cafe or jazz club in Chicago that we deeply connect our current jazz programming to this history. So it makes sense that we're in this neighborhood also because of the disinvestment that has happened in many Black neighborhoods in Chicago. And you have people who have art practices or are trying to create, and they need to leave where they live in order to make that happen. And that's not how that should be. Every neighborhood should have a park and a library and a grocery store, and it should also have places where people can convene and come together and share ideas and dream what's possible.
Alyssa, you're a choreographer. I'd love to hear about the choreographic arts program and then also the Southside Home Movie Project.
The choreographic arts program, or we call it CAP, is part of the APL education, which has many, many different tiers in it. It's also includes our design apprenticeship program, where we have our wood shop in the arts incubator, and those students, literally learn woodworking and blueprinting and all of that. And then we have our Teen Arts Council, which is more of the civic leaders. And then we have backstage production, and those students learn like literally how to run a show from like lightboard to soundboard and setting and striking. But the choreographic arts program is led by Kiara Kiki King, and the focus of CAP is to talk about Chicago dance history. So we're talking about footworking, we're talking about like majorette and all of that. And also those students learn how to build dance also, like with their own choreographic voice. Kiki does a really good job of investing in the students and like finding their own stories and then guiding them to like build solos and trios and duets. And so the Southside Home Movie Project, which is part of Arts and Public Life, is this really beautiful program. I love talking about it, where we have this huge archive of home movies that have been donated from families and that have been digitized. And I mean, we're talking from Queen Elizabeth's first visit in the city of Chicago, and then like decades and years of the Bud Billiken Parade. And then, we've got New Year's Eves and weddings and just I think there's just so much in there. And so Southside Home Movie Project also works with other artists. We've got Spinning Home Movies. So they work with musicians to make special tracks that go with they've dug into the archive and pulled footage, and then they make music to it. And that's really beautiful. And we've also done like Home Movie Day. It's just and Southside Home Movie Project also will be reached out to and like donate parts of the archive or like help figure out parts of the archive for other films. It's just a really beautiful thing that is part of Arts and Public Life. And this year, the CAP program and Southside Movie Project are going to be working together for the Bud Billiken Parade. So those students, along with Kiki, are going to be diving into the archive and pulling out dance moments from past Bud Billiken parades, and like relearning or understanding like the history behind some of those moves and what those things mean. And then they on June 30th will premiere some of that work that they've done.
Have you looked at any of the footage so far, like from, at least in terms of the dance footage from the parades?
Yeah, we got to see some in some of our staff meetings as the films, like it's discovery in real time. So the families will donate these, and then the archivists will like process them and look at them, and they've shown us stuff in staff meetings, and it's so special. Just like the archive as a whole, like the Bud Billiken Parade and seeing it through the years, that's incredible. But there's something very precious and tender about the Southside Home Movie Project because it's people's personal home movies, and so you're seeing like domesticity, and you're seeing like inside their home, unwrapping presents. Maybe like your hair's not done, it's 1963. You see this like interesting family room and like a tinsel, like gold or silver, like Christmas tree. It feels so special to receive those and then connect with artists who animate and activate them and breathe like whole new life into them.
What do you think prompts people to donate that footage?
I think people want to keep their family like memories alive and like reconnect with them, and like share them and be like a part of it, like making like the community kind of whole. I know that some donor families have said like, I don't even know what's on this. I found these and they were in a box in the basement, and I don't even know what's written on here. And so to be able to revisit, and then like it's their own family tree, right? And so they're like reconnecting, and they're like, oh my gosh, I always heard about Uncle so-and-so, and like there he is, and this was the time that my family was talking about this. And I think it's the joy that brings, and especially in Black communities, like our history, a big portion of our history is, erased. And so in our community, being able to see the joy and the memories that our families have had is just also really special.
I don't think people are consciously saying, I am giving this to arts and public life. And we are, there are gaps in the historic record, and we can fill it. But in a way, I do think there is a lofty goal when people hand it over that, both our city and then our communities have been so stigmatized. And this shows a different humanity when you look at these images.
My favorites are always like the parties in the houses.
The dancing.
I love the dancing, the seeing people like playing cards and like smoking cigarettes and drinking, and you can almost hear the music. Sometimes you're just like, oh my gosh, these people were so happy and so joyous, and this was such a special moment for them that like now I'm invited into, and that feels really tender.
Let's talk about Never So Free. What is it and what inspired it?
Yeah, Never So Free. The full name is Never So Free Queer Black Art and Assembly in Chicago. And it is a project that Arts and Public Life kind of dreamed up to connect with artists. After we had done a film screening, I think in 2023, of a documentary called Fierceness Served, which was looking at queer Black spaces in DC. And it was such a rewarding experience. We partnered with space makers in Chicago, other arts organizations, and in a kind of typical fashion that happens at APL, we start a relationship in one way, and then we kind of find a way to expand that. So what Never So Free became in 2024 was, and we didn't intend for this, but we did, we created a mini residency, a micro community between artists who identify as queer and Black, and we invited them for a 7-month experience with us, where they would come to salons where we would excavate and look at the history of queer Black space making in Chicago, and then kind of track that lineage to contemporary folks who are making spaces today. The history often of queerness there are gaps in that as well, but In particular, when we know about spaces, they're often bars or it's a nightlife kind of understanding. And we wanted to get at sort of how that is important and true, and we need those, but there's this other level of spaces that people were giving real care to, like truly creating civic infrastructure. And so we kind of did a meditation on those spaces and looked at contemporary spaces that are liminal, so like itinerant groups that don't necessarily, you know, like have a brick and mortar or rent space but move around the city. And then we had those artists who were with us for 7 months do offerings where whatever their art practice was, they were connecting in these 3 public moments and inviting an audience that expanded each time, so that by the end, we had this, you know, we had an assembly of people interested in thinking about liberatory space and what it takes to keep that alive in Chicago. And then in 2025, we pivoted from that and did this bus journey where we went through the city and visited some contemporary spaces and pointed out some lost spaces and talked to artists like Jen Freeman, who has the House of the Lord in Mana Contemporary, or Greystone Collective, which is an artist space in Bronzeville. And, you know, we like got on the magical school bus and went to these spaces and talked to the folks who this is their passion project. Some of them have, you know, other jobs during the day, but then they care enough about the communities that they're involved in that they've found ways to invest. And then we did a mixer for artists and space makers, so people could just find each other and get connected and get inspired so that they could share resources. And we hope that Never So Free just kind of continues to evolve. It is about relationships. And so we anticipate that through a relationship that we've already started, it will have a life in 2026 and beyond with some funding.
I went on the bus tour. It was so cool. That was such a special day.
It was. We saw like Frankie Knuckles' first apartment in South Shore, and that's cool in and of itself, but then to understand like why that was a neighborhood where he lived. The high rises that are in South Shore often had ballrooms, and so that's literally like a connection to ball culture, and house music is often associated with the warehouse. But through this, we learned there were gay men who were opening their homes to having parties because it was safer to organize there. And so, you know, kind of disrupting the notion or expanding the understanding of the history of house music and gathering in general. It was really special.
Yeah, maybe talk a little bit more about that, because I think most people, when they think about ball culture or ballroom culture, they think about New York. They think about Paris is Burning. They think very specifically about New York. And I don't know, until I started doing research for this conversation, I didn't know there was a connection between house and ball culture. So I mean, I'd love to hear just if you could talk a little bit more about that, that would be great.
Oh, wow. So who we should get is Dwayne Powell, a music historian. I was like, I am not going to position myself as like a definitive public historian, but you know, I can speak to patterns. And I think I'm like not going to answer your question, but I am going to say that, you know, we did unlock this like really cool kind of understanding that spaces are you need custodians of spaces. You need people who care. And Chicago has had, you know, a really long history of people finding ways to transform buildings into creative havens. So a contemporary version of what we saw was, we met a young woman, I think she was in her 20s. She purchased her first home in her 20s. She's turned it into an artist residency and a gathering space, a ceramic studio, robotic stuff in the garage. Like, it's just this ingenuity in Chicago of like, okay, I figured it out and I want to share it. I don't want to keep it. I want people to access it and know about it. And all along the way, that's what I felt was a very sort of Chicago spirit of like, well, we got this space. You know, we applied for this grant, we did this thing, and we want as many people to benefit from it as possible. And that's not just true to the queer community. I think it's true to the arts community and also true to the Chicago spirit.
That reminds me, like, yeah, I like as I said, I can't position myself to properly answer that question. I know some friends of mine that are in like the ballroom culture and like are going to battles and performing, and it's still very like you have to be connected to the community to engage in it. And I really respect that, especially as an artist and performer myself. I'm like, take your space and make sure that it's like fully safe, fully the people that need to be in there. But also I really want to go in there and like I will be respectful. Please let me in. I'll just stand in the back and but
well, we did have a sample. Like we were invited in that one way with legendary fabulous Freddie. We've invited to both versions of Never So Free to do instruction, and we learned how some of us learned, some of us made our way through, but like he explained all the different elements, and then we got to sit and we were able to do it together, so there was like a level of the playing field where it was like it's okay to not be good at this, and we're all gonna try it out and be free.
Be free. I also want to say that the DIY culture here in Chicago is really special. When we were talking about spaces and space making, when I first got here, there was projects like the Dojo that was a collective of artists that were all living in this massive house together and just making art. And like they would, this is like when Facebook was really like, that's where you found out what was happening. But they would be like, there's a Dojo activation happening and the list of these artists are going to be here and they're just going to be showing work. And then like an organization like The Inconvenience would have this loft that they would put shows and plays and dances and productions in, and it was like just a group of artists coming together and being like, we have this space, we all have different interests, here we go, and how can we use this and bring people in. And I think that that DIY of bringing people in is very very Chicago, of being and like building your own community and having that connection. And a lot of the art that I'm lucky to experience in my time here, I totally remember running into this person at the Dojo. I totally, Michael DeVille, who's worked with us with Southside Movie Project, he lived in the Dojo. That's how I met him originally. And he's a rapper and a poet. And I saw him very early doing things. And now I'm like, you've like made 3 or 4 albums and you're just, it's the evolution of the art of the artist, and the art is also really special.
I'm going to diverge a little bit. I mean, I'm curious for both of you, and Alyssa, you specifically, you talk about, you've met all these people and these different sort of communities that have popped up. How did you find your place in the Chicago arts community?
Well, I moved here 15 years ago, and I had just graduated my undergrad in dance major, and I knew sort of 2 people here. And as a dancer, you go to class and you go to shows, and then you just talk to people and talk to people and talk to people. And I was lucky that I entered into some dance companies and that those people were really beautiful and friendly, and I got to just meet other artists that way. But I think my really core community exploded when I joined the Fly Honey show, and that awakened a lot in me. I started going to this thing on Monday nights. It's no longer around, but it was called Salonathon. And it happened at Beauty Bar every Monday night. And it was curated by, Jane Beachy, Will Von Vogt, Bindu, Pori, and oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the fourth. It's gone. I'm so sorry to that fourth person. I cannot remember. They would curate and have a theme every week, and then they would ask artists to respond to the theme. And I went every Monday night. And this is where like I saw Sarah Squirm, now Sarah Sherman on SNL, right? Like she was there doing her comedy. And so I would just go to these shows and see artists, and like Michael was there doing stuff. Now his now wife Mackenzie, who's a dear friend, poetry. Like you just connected at these things, at this bar, and just it was two like lights and a bike, and you just did it. And it was never super. Some stuff was super polished. Some stuff was like I'm in works in process, and this is how it is. So I think those two things really connected me to my dance community. And so those people there were queer. Those people there were Black and brown. And we just got to see our rawest selves. And I performed at Salon-a-thon, and I was with Fly Honey for 15 years. And that was just like also a really big moment of connection, as we would bring in these mega artists in the city and feature and highlight them, and just seeing some of the best art that I've like ever witnessed. So yeah, the Salon-a-thon and the Fly Honey show.
Amazing. That's so great. Do you have, I'm sorry, I keep going down this, pulling at this thread, but I find it so interesting for new artists coming to Chicago. What do you recommend to them if they're, you know, kind of looking for that community, that in real life community?
I would just say like going to shows. Like the places like Salon-a-thon sadly aren't around anymore, and Fly Honey just sunsetted last year. But I would say that there's also these young artists. This woman, her name's Anna Caff, and she just did a thing called Tiny Dances at this bar called Dorothy's, the lesbian bar in Ukrainian Village. Yes. And she just was like, I'm doing this thing. Here we go, you know, and a lot of, especially, and I'm more familiar with the dance community, but a lot of dancers now are meeting in at class and just in like forming their own little communities, and then being like, do you want to share a show? So I would say to dancers, class is vital, and going to see shows is really vital, and sending the message of like afterwards in the DMs, like it's okay to slide into someone's DMs and be like, I really like your work. Thanks so much. You know, that's it. That type of connection, I think, is going to be really, really important for young, new artists into the city. And come to Arts and Public Life, duh.
Of course, of course. So a perfect segue. Arts and Public Life has a bunch of events coming up. There's the First Monday Jazz Series. There's Pride Market. There is, you know, relative to what we were talking about before, the pre-parade, the Bud Billiken pre-parade showcase. I'd love to hear, you know, a little bit about each of those. What are you most excited about? And if there's more, let's talk about it. What's Arts and Public Life have going on? What's coming up?
There's 4 venues that make up Arts and Public Life, and kind of like each building more or less serves like a different kind of art practice. So at the Arts Incubator right now, if folks like truly wanted to come this week, they could come see Jess Atieno's show. We have a solo exhibition by a Kenyan artist who has been an artist in residence in the past at Arts and Public Life. The show has a really long name. It's Ghosts is in there. Come on, comms, help me out.
It's like Sightlines, Ghosts, and Other Stories. Oh no, oh no, oh no.
We love you, Jess, but folks could come when Thursday, Friday, or Saturday from 1 to 5 and do like a little lovely gallery visit, and then walk down the street just a few doors down, and they could visit L1, where you mentioned at the end of the month, we're going to have the Pride Market in the back patio of L1, which is also sort of this send-off, the swan song for Reform School, who is the business in residence at L1. So that's a going to be a really lovely Saturday activation where we don't do things simply. So there'll be DJs, there'll be music. It's not just vending. The Green Line Performing Arts Center. So if the Arts Incubator sort of serves more like the visual artists, and like that's where our design apprenticeship students work in the wood shop, Green Line Performing Arts Center is where, as we've evolved down the street, that's where many of like our film and performance and artist talks and lectures happen. And so, we've had grown folks stories that started at, the Silver Room, and I think now is everywhere. It's at DuSable. It used to be at the Promontory. We have storytelling from there. We have comedy sets. But we try to be outside in the summer. So most of the things that we have in Green Line, we transition outside to the Arts Lawn, which is the newest venue. It opened in 2023, and that's our beautiful outdoor venue with an active side that we program with a pavilion where folks can bring their lawn chairs and sit out under the stars for a performance or for live music, or they can visit during the day. The passive side, there's a hill, there's beautiful plants. You can sit on a bench, you can draw, you can nap. So like it feels like there's something to do almost every day. Staff are there Monday through Friday, but activations typically happen in the evening. We have sunset yoga. So we've had as a space in a residential neighborhood, invitation is really important, and gestures of radical hospitality and welcome is always at the forefront of our mind and part of our care of our practice of care. So not everybody loves art, or not everybody knows what it can do to their body and their mind. And so yoga is actually something since the incubator opened in 2013 that Arts and Public Life has offered. And we now partner with this incredible PhD student at the University of Chicago, Rhea Moffitt, and she has created a series this summer. She did it last summer. This is a reprisal where every Wednesday as the sun sets, so it changes a little bit, the start time changes. She leads people through a really beautiful yoga session. She sets intentions, she has teas, she has a reading.
It's got oils. Yeah,
it's lovely. So you can come for that. If that's not your jam and you want to be a little more active and talkative, we have poetry at the pavilion this summer. We're just starting that. Alyssa, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, this is like this is our newest program. And so we are inviting a poet to share some of their work, and they'll speak poetry from some of their favorite artists. So Ariane Roach, it will be the first poet, and they're going to be sharing their work. They're also going to be sharing work, I believe, from Gwendolyn Brooks. And then they've also invited another poet who's also going to be sharing their work. And then as the night progresses, they will be guiding the participants who come with like writing of their own poetry. And so by the end of it, this will happen in June, July, August, and I believe September. And by the end of it, there'll be like this plethora of poetry that Arts and Public Life like participants have built together. And this one is like sunset yoga. The time will change because it's also during that like golden hour. And I think that's really special because it like shows the evolution of summer, where we started and we're going through the phases all together. So I think Poetry at the Pavilion is going to be really beautiful. And I just want to say that Jess's exhibition is called Sightlines, Ghosts, and Other Stories of the Impossible. I want to get that right.
I also want to say, if you're a parent desperate for something to do with your kid who wakes up perhaps at 6 a.m. on the weekends, we through one of our former artists in residence who now has a position at Old Town School of Folk Music, we partner on a project called Southside Fireflies, and it's adorable songs and instruction and playtime for kids like 0 to 5. And there's teaching artists who sing. They use the songbook of
Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Earth, Wind, and Fire. And then, expand out from that. But it's an adorable out. It's hard. They're the best photos we have are the kids at Southside Fireflies, because the adorable factor is through the roof. And it's an hour of what you imagine a kindergarten teacher does all day is like wrangle wild children through song.
It's really cute. There's bubbles, they have instruments, there's scarves, and I've like walked in and I just been like, this is so this is so special. And the kids are so happy, and the instructors are so talented at keeping the room alive and keeping, every child engaged. It's as someone that used to teach kids dance, it's a feat, and they're very, very talented at it.
Well, this all sounds so much fun, and there's so much to do. There's so much programming. That's incredibly cool. We are almost at the end of our time. And at the end of every episode, we like to ask, when people come visit Chicago, what are the things you tell them that they have to do while they're here?
There's a Brazilian restaurant on Chicago Avenue. No, the name is, I look it up every time I try to send someone there.
Are you talking about Bracero?
Yes. Yes, I think I've sent it to you when you needed a date.
Yeah. I was like, I know, Bracero.
Yeah.
That place is very, very good.
Yeah.
I say eating for sure. I always will tell people to go get a burger at Rootstock. I think their burger and their wine list is exceptional. I will say there is the place that I'm like kind of obsessed with right now is this barbecue place called Soul and Smoke. That's in Avondale. So delicious. And then there's also this Mediterranean spot. I will say Mediterranean. That might not be fully correct. Called Galit. That's in Lincoln Park. Yeah. That's and I know the dudes that run that place, and they're just so incredibly lovely. And it says, what is the restaurant that we've tried to get reservations at? That's across
Cantina
from.
Rosa?
Say it again.
Cantina Rosa?
Yes, Cantina Rosa.
I knew when you said we tried. And yeah, we wanted to do an artist dinner there. It's adorable. It's in a former laundromat, and you would never know it. It's owned also by Eric Williams, who owns Virtue, and it's very special. I know people go for food and drinks. I go for the aesthetic. I think it's so pretty.
You feel like you're not in the city all of a sudden, because the doors are these like opaque, like frosted glass. And so when they close, you like literally, I'm like, am I in Chicago still, or am I like in Mexico City? Like, I can't really tell. It's really beautiful in there.
And I really love the people who are visiting, and I'm also always picturing visiting in summer. So all these answers, November.
Yeah.
But I would say the hidden gem, one of the hidden gems of the South Side, is the South Side Cultural Center, the beach behind it, and the nature preserve. I don't want every North Sider to know about it, so I probably shouldn't on podcast. But it's like to see the cityscape, to see people in the water, to look over and see the fire pit off in the distance through the nature preserve. It's like, then there's music, there's everybody's music being played. It just feels so Chicago to me. So that's one of the natural resources I tell people to check out.
Yeah, I always just say you have to go to the lake. Like, you have to go to the lake. I can't count, how many people I have like that visited me, and then I'm like, you have a beach? Like, you have a whole beach? And I'm like, we have miles of beach, baby. We got miles of beach. Like, it is something special. Yeah. That is, the lake is like very healing. That's like one of my favorite places.
All right. All good recommendations. Thanks to you both so much for joining us today. This was fun and super informative. Thanks again.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for listening to Notes from Chicago. This podcast is edited and produced by Tanisha Blakely. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to Notes from Chicago on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts.